Hello, everybody. Welcome to Virtual Thursdays Dire Literary Series. And it's nice to see some new faces tonight. And a face that's not new to me is our feature, Sarah Bridgins. And Sarah and I met. We did what a great reading we did with, well, you did, and Monica did. Not going to
You
say
were
that.
fantastic. Everybody was great.
But it was a great reading, and Sarah's poetry impressed me, and her attitude impressed me, and I'm just really excited to have her here and featuring. So here's a little bit about Sarah, and yeah, I do such wonderful things with the screen share, like go on the wrong page. There she is, and I'm looking for the bio page. Sarah, where's your bio? Which of these?
One.
Sarah is a Brooklyn poet. Her first book, her most recent book, Death and X's, is out now and available. And you all should check it out. And if you want to know more about her, go to her website. And with that, I'm turning it over to you to knock our heads off.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Um, this is my book that just came out at the end of 2020, Death and X's. It's my first published poetry collection. And I'm going to read some poems from it. All right. 31. I can deal with growing older as long as I also grow more glamorous. I want to have fake nails, fake boobs, and real furs. There's nothing more glamorous than smoking for your entire life and never getting cancer. As a child, I thought my mother was glamorous. She only wore silver because she said gold looked cheap. Smoked unfiltered cigarettes ringed with red lipstick. The last time I saw my mother was 2 years before she died. She was haggard, poor thin, not rich thin, clutching a pillow to hide a non-existent paunch. It was like she had molted with age, shedding her silk nightgown's heavy perfume and emerging a pale callow. Now, my role models are Dolly Parton, RuPaul, the beautiful murderesses on Columbo, in that order. At a cabaret show, I heard Justin Bond say, "It takes guts to be glamorous," before recounting a story about a woman who cut her finger at a party, then bit off the dangling tip and spit it in the toilet. I am Rita Hayworth, and you are Orson Welles. On my birthday, we got into a fight because you started talking about how great Orson Welles was, and I said, "But what about Rita Hayworth? What about the way he cheated on her when she was pregnant and left her because she was too insecure, even though when they met, that was the very thing he liked most about her? The way she was too damaged to be seduced by her own glamour. Because what had it ever gotten her, except for a father who pretended to be her husband and a husband who acted like her pimp? I guess it's unfair to get mad at you for the failings of the dead. I just want to feel like there's a precedent for our dysfunction. When we met, I was a burlesque dancer and you were a genius. Now you are a genius and I am an orphan. It's the truest path to heartbreak when all you have to offer is your beauty and your trauma, held out like a jewel that only loses value over time. Years from now, when you've lost your dignity and I've lost my mind, you'll approach me at a party and wonder if I recognize you. You'll grasp my hand, lie about how beautiful I look, and when I start to cry, that's how you'll know. I remember everything. Sea of Crises. I've kept the funeral flowers so long they're as dead as my father, wilted to dust. When people ask me what they can do, I say, "You're doing it. Call, listen." What I want to say is, send presents. Gold glitter eyeliner, a confetti cake with frosting so sweet it melts my teeth. I open sympathy cards and wait for checks to fall out. I have a drawer full of pills given to me by loved ones, a closet full of party dresses that I catalog in my head, like saying a prayer to a future where it will matter if I'm sexy. I want to find a way to quantify despair. I see your crippling loss and raise you too. I know this isn't a contest, but I've won. The velvet season. My wounds have been so salted they're cured. There are things I cannot think about. Austin, Texas, all of Texas, neckties and top hats, cockroaches and tardigrades, Moscow, the moon. When you're gone, I fill out online surveys for people who are trying to steal my identity. Lie awake and fantasize about carving my name into my thighs with a kitchen knife. My heart is a wad of wet paper towels, a raw steak, a bath toy. I'm tired of pursuing troubled people. They should be pursuing me. I'm gonna make you love me. There are things you don't say to someone you're in a relationship with. I don't know what they are, so I'm always apologizing for accidentally being a horrible person. I promise I will gain back all the weight I lost when I was sad, then lose it again if you don't like it. We can spend all night in the emergency room with the drunks who couldn't make it home, and I'll stare at the floor for hours, trying not to be the kind of girl who says she hates hospitals. I will do a glove peel with my ass crack, dress up like a Disney princess and strip naked in a bar to a song called Gypsy Wine. Instead of taking vows, we can exchange ring fingers at the first knuckle, bitten through the bone. Bodies shaking with anticipation, we'll extend our hands to one another, eyes closed, mouths open, like children at their first communion, waiting to receive the host. Taking pills in public. I hate to ruin your childhood, but slice and bake cookies aren't any good. The oil coats your tongue, forms a seal that only the taste of sugar and preservatives can penetrate. I'll get back to you on Hamburger Helper when I remember how to shop for more than one thing. All of my apertures are open. On the best days, they let in too much light. On the worst, the background blurs. I thought slice and bake cookies would resolve this. You wonder why I do this now, when all I have at home are Whole Foods bags filled with pictures of the dead and imaginary places like Girl Scout camp in San Francisco. I'll tell you. One night when you were gone, I took out my mother's coral necklace, wrapped it tight around my neck, and tried to breathe. One or two more. Lunch break. If you have never cried while listening to Time After Time in a deli, waiting to buy a can of chili, I don't want to talk to you. I had that fantasy today where the elderly woman standing in front of me said I could go ahead of her in line, and when I refused, she helped me. I am constantly trying to buy you things. Overpriced chocolate, Thai basil, that book about what to do when your girlfriend forgets how to ride the subway alone. As if any of it makes up for this, as if there were no more to do than open my arms and say, here, here. All right, last one. Okay. Night at the Motor Museum. My boyfriend had just left me and my father was still alive, though not for long. My father. This is how well he knew me. For Christmas, he got me a chocolate bar with Andy Warhol's picture on the wrapper, a stuffed cat wearing a Christmas hat, and a copy of the semi-homemade cookbook by Sandra Lee. I read the most repulsive recipes to him, while he read to me from a copy of Guns and Garden magazine that he had bought for me to give to him because he thought that would be funny. The next day, we went to the Motor Museum in Philadelphia. Since my breakup, my heart felt raw and bloody enough to be wrapped up in in butcher paper. I was at home among the exposed vital organs, bones laid bare, cabinets filled with deformed fetuses in jars. I knew what it felt like to be pickled, preserved, told that there's a future out there and maybe you're in it, maybe you're not. It occurred to me that having a conjoined twin might be worse than being lonely. Looking back, it seems fitting that this would be our last day together, not knowing that soon my father's body would be reduced to the same collection of parts. We spent all afternoon touring these vestiges of death and disease, making ourselves comfortable. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. And that was a wonderful reading. And there's some great comments in the chat, but I don't want you to be distracted when you're answering questions. So don't look at some people look at questions, but I will moderate them. So I introduced you as a poet that really blew my head off. And so as a poet, what blows your head off? Is it more form, language in a poem, or delivery?
I don't pay a lot of attention to form. I think it's voice. I think voice is what is the most exciting thing to me. Yeah.
All right. You have a lot of your poems, especially the ones you read in New York. Of course, you're in New York right now. Were very revealing. Have you ever wished that, like in your book, you could take them out, or have you ever felt uncomfortable reading some of them?
There's nothing I wish I could take out. I mean, some of these poems, they range from when I was like, I'm 38 now, from when I was like 25 to when I was in my early 30s. I still like all of them. None of them make me cringe, but I would say some of the ones from way back when I was 25, I don't read as much because I have a hard time relating to that person in some ways. So it just feels sort of weird to read them now, however many years later.
Now, your book is Exes and Death. What are the poems about your actual exes, or are they just other people's exes? In other words, like Richard Burton and why am I blanking on
Liz Taylor?
Liz Taylor, yes. Do you write about them, or do you write about your exes?
No, I write about my exes. Yeah, it's all pretty literal, autobiographical. Yeah.
Now, what do your exes say about this book or the poems?
I think a lot of them don't know that I wrote about them, so that's probably good for everybody. One in particular who I wrote a lot about had a really good attitude about it. He was very good-natured as much as he could be. Although we're still friends, we still have a relationship. He did ask me at one point to stop reading them when he was there in the room. And I was like, that's a really fair boundary to set.
Now, this one might be a harder question. Is the poems about death about people that you knew too? And is any family members maybe read them?
Yeah, I had a really gnarly couple years. I am an only child, and both my parents died, and my grandmother, who I was very close to, so my already very small family kind of got whittled down to basically me and my aunt. So she has read them, and she's been very wonderful and supportive. I think she has a little PTSD, flashing back to kind of a bad time for both of us, but I think it's cathartic too.
All right, I'm going to go to a question in the chat from Robert. I just want to do this because that's the name. His real name is Robert Fleming, but it says, here's a question from Robert F. Doodle Guy. So I kind of like that name better. So Robert Fleming asks, he describes himself as an experimental writer, and he's experienced division between traditional and experimental writers. And what is your experience as an experimental writer on the edge?
Oh, I don't consider myself to be experimental at all. I consider myself to be. That's very interesting. I like some experimental writing. I like writing that sort of incorporates different mediums, but I don't know that I really do that myself. I consider most of my writing to be kind of straightforward and not that not super playful.
Rachel L. asks, well, first she tells you your poems are effing brilliant, but can you talk about the relationship between dark humor and persona in your poems? And is it hard to read the stuff on Zoom, not getting a response from the audience, even though we gave you some good feedback?
Yeah, I think I love dark humor. I think humor is really important. You know, I don't know, Joan Rivers has that thing about if you're not laughing, you're crying. And, you know, it's kind of the only way for me to get through the worst things. So yeah, I love humor and poetry. I think for some people it's unexpected, but you know, there are a lot of really wonderful, really funny poets. And yeah, it's a little weird reading on Zoom, but you know, I've done plenty of readings in person where I didn't get much feedback. So, you know,
That's the word.
We've all had those readings.
Darren Black would like to know about your process. Do you tend to write the whole poem in one sitting or something else?
I wish I had a process. I take a lot of notes and I journal, and so I'll sort of collect like scraps of poems and lines and stanzas. And then at some point, you know, I'll force myself to sit down and kind of go through it and start pulling things together. Yeah, I work pretty slowly. I definitely do drafts. Yeah. But I'm not super disciplined. I don't do that thing where like I wake up at 6 o'clock every morning and I sit down. I mean, I'm sure I'd get a lot more done if I did.
Lee would like to know about how you feel about Anne Sexton, and has Anne Sexton influenced you?
Anne Sexton is great. Yeah, I would say Anne Sexton, I actually just read one of her books. Yeah, I would say my biggest influences are, I love Sharon Olds, I love Frank O'Hara. I'm going to say her name wrong, but I saw that she recently read with you, Timothy Kim Adenizio.
Yes.
I never say it right, but I'm obsessed with her, and it's so embarrassing because she's like my favorite poet of all time, and I can't say her freaking name right. Yeah, those are probably my biggest influences.
Yeah, when I say her name, my mouth automatically wants to go to Adderall Zio, and it just doesn't work.
I know, I just got all like mush mouth. Yeah. She's amazing now.
When I was talking to her. Now, I read that you described yourself as an old lady. Is that the same as being an old soul?
Maybe. Aesthetically, I'm very into florals and velvet, and yeah.
Also, you're very influenced in your work with pop culture. Even your cats are named Willie Nelson and Dolly Parton. But you have poems with Whitney Houston in them. You had that poem with Rita Hayworth in it. What is it about pop culture that you're attracted to?
I think, especially with this book, where a lot of the poems are about sort of grief, you know, grieving people who are gone in one way or another, just not in my life, or gone from, you know, the earth. I think I spent a lot of time thinking about not guilty pleasures, but like comfort food and comfort, just things, you know, and a lot of that is like culture and music or movies or The Real Housewives or whatever. And I think people can be really dismissive of those things. But for me, when I was going through a hard time, it was sort of like what really got me through. And I think a lot of those things can have kind of like a profound emotional resonance, even if, you know, superficially they seem kind of light or stupid. Yeah.
What's behind you? The artichoke hearts, the coffee, and the potato chips.
I'm in my kitchen. There's gummy vitamins, there's garbage bags.
Also, I read actually your essay about going to the 7-Eleven when your father passed as a way to kind of overcome that. And do Do you still find comfort in junk food or things out of the ordinary? Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a bunch of crap behind me. Yeah, it's all about balance, but I also sort of believe in, I mean, whatever. Anything can cross a line between like self-indulgence and self-destruction, but I'm a big fan of not really denying yourself things,
And
whether it's Cheetos or whatever. We're all just trying to get through the day.
now, do you have a replacement behavior to replace the drinking of banana Slurpees?
No, I just still do that. Yeah, what needs replacing?
The other thing I noticed about your reading tonight is, and I think this is wonderful, you'll take some very obscure moments and make them relatable. For example, the co-joined twins to loneliness, and the time after time while you're ordering chili in a deli, and slice and bake cookies. Do you like notice like really obscure things or odd things in your life and be like, that's really cool, or that's really interesting?
I try to. I think in any kind of writing, specificity is so important. I mean, it's that whole thing where the more specific it is, the more like relatable it is, weirdly, art. But yeah, I mean, I try. That's, part of the journaling and note taking.
Are you still writing essays?
Sort of. Yes, I'm gonna say yes. I haven't in a minute, but yeah, that's something that I still really love nonfiction. Yeah, narrative nonfiction.
You just did a reading with some wonderful writers, Sarah Littman, who I've had here, Chloe Caldwell, the
Oh
essayist.
yeah. Yeah, I'm the co-host of a reading series here in Brooklyn. And yeah, they both read with us and were fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, Sarah Littman's great. I've known her for a long time.
Yeah. So now that you mentioned you're a co-host of a reading series, every poet in the room just perked up, and you're like, I'm available next Saturday at that series. Do you enjoy doing being a host of a reading series, or is it sometimes like the month comes up and you're kind of like, I gotta do it?
I love it. Actually, the co-founder of this series is in this room, Rachel. She's here somewhere. But yeah, I used to work in publishing. I used to be a literary agent. Now I work in finance. But when I stopped working in publishing, I found that I really missed that, just connecting writers to each other and sort of having like a literary community and introducing people to amazing writers that maybe they didn't know about. So I felt like I really still needed to scratch that itch. So I do that through the reading series. And yeah, I still really love it. It also helps that it's like a block away from my apartment. So it's never like, oh no, I have to like go to Williamsburg. I'm like, I walk across the street and I walk home.
Is You said you used to be a literary agent. What has changed in the publishing world in terms of agents, how they used to be and what they're doing now?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, that was probably, yeah, that was like 10 years ago. I worked at an agency for about 7 years. I was the office manager, but I had like a tiny list of my own clients. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know that much has changed, which is maybe a problem. Because when I was sort of like in the trenches, yeah, it wasn't the best experience. There's low pay. People aren't that creative in, I don't know, their taste. I think a lot of people in publishing sort of have the same taste, and that's reflected in a lot of the books that get published. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that much has changed. I think maybe more things should change. I mean, there's some really great indie presses that are out there, but that can be its own thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I used to be the indie presses were an alternative, but they only would put out a few books a year. Now I think what I feel, and tell me if I'm off my mark. I think the indie presses are really kind of dropping the ball in terms of visibility and really making a lot of noise about, hey, we're taking submissions and they're free. I think so many people these days are so willing to accept boutique type publishers that they're paying a lot of money to get their books out.
Yeah, that's a whole thing. I used to write reviews for Kirkus that were like paid, so people would pay for that, and then I would read the book and I would review it. I don't know. It's a whole, I mean, indie presses are hard because, you know, they're all labors of love, and some of them are run by people who are independently wealthy and that's how they can do it, and a lot of them aren't. And so, you know, it's hard.
Yeah, well, I really, really enjoyed having you here, and I appreciate you so much. And thank you very much for your readings and your answering of all my questions and folks' questions here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really great. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
And once again, if you want to find out a little bit more about Sarah, and I'm not you know what? It's always that awkward moment when you think you're sharing the screen, but you're just kind of looking at your own computer screen. Not. So here it is. You want to find out more about Sarah, sarahbridgins.com, and it's about her book. I'm sure you can buy the book from there, and the press and writing and readings and all kinds of fun stuff. So, and that really snazzy cool mod outfit if you want to go and see that. So anyway, thank you so much. And the folks that are watching the stream on the Facebook page, I'm going to say goodbye to you. But if you want to show up and log on and be part of the open mic, why don't you use the link and I'll gladly welcome you in. So thanks again, Sarah.